Sunday school teacher after church looks at her class and goes, I want you to write a letter to God. And one little 5-year-old girl writes, God, we had a really good time in church today. I really wish you were here. So, we believe he is here, right? We talk about that all the time. God within us, God without us, God all over the place. Everything God. See, here's the thing. I was looking at the Bible. I had a revelation. This was, for me, a revelation. I was thinking about the Bible. Not something I often do. Now, you'd think as a minister I'd think about the Bible more, but actually I don't. But in this case, I was. And I was thinking about Genesis. And I was thinking about how everybody, pretty much, not everybody, but lots of folks, including myself, think, okay, the whole 6-day thing. God created the world in 6 days. Something about that symbolic. It couldn't really be that way because, there's all this evidence. There's this evidence that it took billions of years, that there was a big bang and that light traveled and that all these different things were happening. And we have fossils. So we have tons and tons of evidence that there's just no way it happened in 6 days. So scientists explain that away. Well, maybe the first day was like 1 million years or something. And they start thinking of all these different ways, scholars, to fit into our rational minds how it could have been 6 days. And then the revelation I had was, if I don't believe that it actually could have happened in 6 days, then what am I doing teaching science of mind? Because isn't it true that what we believe here is that the second we embody something, it shows up? And so in that sense, of course God could have created the world in 6 days, in even less time than that, in 6 seconds. Because who can embody God better than God? Right? And so we're looking at a thing here, I was looking at a thing here, where I was thinking to myself, I have to know this is possible. Because if I don't, if I think one thing is not possible, I am then limiting the possibilities of my own life. And I don't want to do that. Do you want to do that? No. So what we want to do here is think that anything is possible. Because the second we think anything is not, we have then limited our ability to believe and to create and do all those things we want to see in our own lives. So the Bible goes on, and it starts with, this wonderful line, which is the basis of our movement of first there was the Word. Which is, what we believe the most power lies in, the Word. And so then it goes on, and he does the thing in 6 days, and then he rests, and then he creates Adam, and then after a while he gets lonely, so then he creates Eve, and then they, eat of some tree that has some knowledge in it that for some reason then pisses God off, because this isn't what he had in mind when he created the world. He had in mind that they would not have that kind of knowledge, and so he kicks them out. They have a couple of kids. One of them kills the other kid. And then all of a sudden, there's all these other people who show up, and I don't know how they got there. But again, I have to believe that's possible. We laugh, and we're sitting here going, that's not possible. It's really easy to see these stories and go, that's not possible. And yet, the second we say that, we've limited our own good. We try to put it through our own sensors of what's real. And the second we do that, we limit our own good. I've sat with people in the hospital who have had tumors disappear, like boom. I have had an experience myself where the doctor said, you have 3 days to live. And that was over 25 years ago. I've fallen off mountains twice. No, 3 times. Twice the first time in a row, because I can be an idiot. And then I actually did it on a whole other occasion as well. But I lived, right? And so I have fantastical stories to tell too. And, and probably you have some too. And yet we're so quick to limit our good by thinking that, no, the Bible stories, that's silly. That couldn't possibly be. How did all those other people show up? Well, if God embodied a whole bunch of other people showing up, he's the embodying dude or woman or being or whatever. And of course, stuff shows up because that's what we believe here, right? That's the heart of our belief, is that the moment we embody something, it shows up. But first, we have to believe that that's possible. So it isn't just that we have to believe in the possibilities of shows up in our life. If we don't believe in the possibilities of what can show up in others' lives, we've actually limited our own good because there's nobody out there. Right? We're all one. There's one mind. So anything we don't believe is possible comes back to haunt us in our own thinking, in our own belief. Somebody comes up and says, I don't believe that, it says a fantastical story, and we go, no way. We've just limited our own good. Because anything's got to be possible. So then God comes along and says, you know what? I think I want to start over. I want to do over. But not everything. So he decides, some things he's done are pretty good. So he gets a hold of this guy, Noah, has him build this amazingly large ark that holds two, and then somehow is able to gather two of everything on the planet, puts them all in there with his family, and then there's a 40-day flood that floods out everybody else, so now it's just Noah. Now, this is how the creative process works. Many times, we need a do-over. And the beauty of new beginnings that we get reminded in the beginning of the year is that do-overs can happen at any moment. They don't just happen at the beginning of the year. They don't just happen at the beginning of a day. They happen all the time when we say so, unless we don't believe it. Right? In quantum physics, they talk about how there's this field of possibility going on every moment of everything. And then what drops in is what we put our focus on. The observer effect is what drops in, as that's then the reality of what occurs. So science isn't actually all that far afield of what it is we're trying to teach here. But the thing about it is, the thing I want to get through to you today is simply the idea that anything is possible, no matter how crazy it seems. And that's the real key here. No matter how crazy it seems. And starting over, if we're not happy with the creation we've made, is really how the creative process can work, because we're recreating whatever we're creating in every given moment. So as soon as we want to stop that recreating and create something new, we go, okay, time for a do-over. But then don't get rid of the baby with the bathwater kind of thing. Hold on to what's good, just get rid of what isn't working. Be discerning. That's the real lesson in the Noah story, is be discerning when you start your creation over. Okay, so then that happens. We go along in Genesis for a while, and then all of a sudden there's all these slaves in Egypt, and this guy Moses comes along and does these amazing things to get the Pharaoh to release them, and they wind up going to a place called the Red Sea, where he does this thing of embodiment where the Red Sea parts and they all cross. And I have been reading all this stuff about how scholars are trying to explain through the physics of this world how that happened. And yet they cannot explain the physics of what's called non-local communication. Communication faster than the speed of light, which is happening all the time because our consciousness is faster than the speed of light. But they're dying to explain how the Red Sea parted. They can't explain how me with 106 fever lived when the doctor said I was a dead man. They can't explain through physical means how tumors disappear or then reappear. Like that story I told you guys that was in the AMA, one of my first Sundays here. For anybody who heard that, I'll be repeating that story again. It's a great story. It was in the AMA. It's a true story about a guy who created and then uncreated and then created and uncreated these huge orange-sized tumors disappearing and reappearing like nothing. And so this is all that's possible when we're believing that anything is possible. You don't want to be saying to yourself, it's possible for me to find a job better than any job I've ever had in my life, but it's impossible for the Red Sea to have parted. Right? It's for your good to believe that the Red Sea parted. It actually is for your good. You don't want to try to believe that your health is going to skyrocket, but that the walls of Jericho didn't fall because of, trumpets. So they finally come out of the desert, and Joshua's got the Ark of the Covenant, and they go to the walls of Jericho, and they walk around them 6 times with the Ark, and then Joshua's saying, okay, we're ready. We blow the horns, and the walls come falling down. Can't you see that? See that their belief in the power of their connection to the one mind, what we call the one mind, what they call God, was so great that of course the walls came down. They knew the walls were coming down. They had no doubt. Dr. Ernest Holmes calls that the calm assurance of knowing that what we want to create is of course coming into life. But if you're sitting here going, no, that's ridiculous to think those walls could come down, what else are you thinking is ridiculous in your own life? Dr. Holmes tells us, when we fail to realize that principle is not bound by precedent, we limit our faith to that which has already been accomplished, and few miracles result. The whole idea here of what it is we're talking about is to get beyond what we think is possible. Is to get beyond what we think is reasonable. What we think, should happen. And the Bible stories are a great way to do that. Great way to start thinking beyond what you think is possible. Am I standing here going, let's take the Bible literally? No. I'm saying let's take it as possible because it can feed our good. It can feed what it is we want to occur. So when I was in my 20s, I was homeless about a month before Christmas. A friend of mine was letting me crash on they were letting me crash on their couch. And I was looking for a place to live. I didn't have a lot of money, but I had a small job and I was making a little bit. But my friend said, you cannot stay here. You have to be out before Christmas. And I found a realtor, and I was working with a realtor, and we were looking for a place that fit my, what I could afford. And we went to a couple of different places, and nobody wanted to share a place with a musician, which is what I was at the time, mostly. And so the realtor goes to her boss and says, this guy is going to be on the streets at Christmas. And so the boss pulls me into his office one day and says, I want to show you a place. And he brings me into a 4-bedroom, cherry wood, everywhere, gorgeously laid out apartment in Brooklyn, in a townhouse. I mean, it was stunning. And I'm walking around, I'm going, okay, what am I doing here? And he goes, well, I've been trying to rent this place for months, and it's going to be open at Christmas, so why don't you just stay here Christmas through New Year's so you're not on the street? Now, I got to tell you, I was not very well washed. I mean, I had been on and off the street. I had hair down to here that wasn't clean. I mean, and I had a coat that was supposed to be light tan that was more like brown. And this guy is talking to me about letting me stay in this amazing apartment. So I said to him, and I don't even know where this idea came from, what if I could rent out the other rooms by the 1st, which was only 2 weeks away, so that I could then pay you the rent? And he goes, sure, if you can do that, fine. If not, just find yourself another place after that. So I put an ad in the Village Voice of New York City. And within 2 weeks, rented out not only the other bedrooms, but the dining room area closed off so it could be another bedroom as well. So I rented the whole place out for so much money that I wound up only paying $150 a month, had the best bedroom in the place with its own private bathroom. Now, imagine trying to think ahead of time that that was possible. Imagine trying to think ahead of time that that thing would unfold the way it did. This is why believing that anything is possible is so important. Because you just can't know where your good is coming from. You just can't know. It's amazing what's possible. So, in the realm of apples don't fall far from the tree, my son, who is 26, tells me that he's about to become homeless, has no place to live, and really doesn't want to pay a lot of rent. And so started telling me about the only things he thought could work. I mean, it either has to be this, or this, or this, or I'm going to be homeless. And I was like, wait a minute. What about all the other possibilities? And he goes, what possibilities? And so I threw a couple at him, but mostly I was more just trying to get to, there's even more than I've never thought of. Because everything that's happened in his life and mine have been beyond what we thought of. And that's the funniest part of the story, and I've said this to you guys before, about the Moses story. The genesis of getting out of Egypt story is that every step along the way, after every single miracle, they then got back into, we're doomed. Every single time. They forgot that the next miracle was possible. How many of us do that in our own lives? We have a miracle occur, and then we're like, okay, but what now? Now I'm doomed again. Or things aren't, or the other shoe is going to fall, or something along those lines. That's not how we want to think in this movement. One of the things we talk about here is we're not here to teach you what to think, but how to think. And how to think has to do with staying in the realm of possibility. Here's what Dr. Holmes thought was possible. There it is. If the philosophy of Christianity were lived, wars would cease, unhappiness would cease, economic problems would be solved, poverty would be wiped off the face of the earth, and man's inhumanity to man would be transmuted into a spirit of mutual helpfulness. Now, isn't that a view of the world that we'd like to have? When we believe that anything is possible, when we stand in that place of anything is possible, that's when the relationship of our dreams finally shows up. That's when our health skyrockets for no apparent reason. That's when that job we never even knew about just shows up before our eyes. That's what's possible when we believe that anything is possible. And that is the greatest lesson we can find from the Bible. Anything is possible. Thank you. All right, take out what you're going to give. Take out what you're going to give and hold it in your hand. Hold it in your hand. Know that this is God too, because this is you. This is how the law of circulation works. You give that part of you, that God energy that is you out, and it returns to you multiplied abundantly. This is how it works. This is how you get the prosperity you want. This is how you get the job you want. This is how you get the life you want. You get this thing moving. So don't crumple it up. Hold it out. Know this is God. And repeat after me. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God.